Hey everyone, be sure to check the new page that I posted. It's giving a rundown of some of the changes for the rest of the time that we're going to be doing this. It's going to be a combination of block scheduling, it's going to talk about the final exams, and just kind of how we're going to go about the rest of the time. So be sure and check that. Also, always keep up with the updates that I'm sending every day. I also mix in there some times where for you to drop a like, you're getting free points or stuff out of that. So just make sure you're keeping up with that, not just doing these screencasts and the work that I post. So we're done with Unit 12. We're now going to move on to Unit 13, which is more quadratic. So we're still going to be doing quadratic stuff from last unit, factoring and all of those type of things. So there's something called U13 Day 1, solving using square roots, and I'm going to walk you through some of that. And then the homework that I will post also will be due, in a couple of days. So let's just jump right into it. Beginning, there's an opener and then also a couple problems from previous stuff. So make sure you take a look at those. I have the answers posted right here for you, so you do have them. Obviously, message me if you have any questions. I want to take a look at number 2C. That one actually has a special pattern to it, but we're going to solve it the same way that we were doing some of the other stuff. So find the zeros means find the x-intercept. So another word for zeros is x-intercepts, and we've talked about that a little bit. So those mean the exact same thing. So in order to do that, you have to factor. So let's take a look at this one. There's no x value in there, so we can still do the diamond, and we think to ourselves, 4 times negative 9 is negative 36, and then since there's no x at all, we get a 0. So we're thinking two numbers that multiply together to be negative 36 that add up to be 0. So that means they have to be exact opposites of each other to add up to be 0. And what you get is a 6 and negative 6. Because this was 4x squared out in front, we write these over 4x. And then one or both of them normally reduce. This one on the right does reduce. Negative 6 over 4 reduces to negative 3 over 2. Same one on this reduces to 3 over 2x. So our two factors, you kind of look at that on its side, and you have a 2x and a positive 3. That's one factor. Then you look at this one kind of on its side. You have a 2x and a negative 3. So a 2x minus 3. Those are our factors. In order to solve, since it's equal to 0, that means we set each of them equal to 0. So 2x plus 3 equals 0, and then 2x minus 3 equals 0. So if we go to solve that, we subtract the 3 on both sides, getting 2x equals negative 3. Then you divide by 2, and we get x equals negative 3 over 2. And we could keep that as a fraction. On the other one, the first step would be add 3 to both sides. You're getting 2x equals a positive 3. We then divide by 2, and we can keep it as a fraction as 3 over 2. So we're getting x equals negative 3 over 2 and x equals 3 over 2. Then we're going to move into some of the new stuff. So a little exploration of sorts. We have a table here, and we have 1 through 10, it looks like, for our x values. and I want you to fill in the x squared values. So that's saying you're taking this and squaring it. So 1 squared is 1. You're taking 2 squared, you're getting 4. And you're going to do that for each of these. So 3 squared, 9. 4 squared, 16. 5 squared. And keep doing that to fill this in. Do the exact same thing for the table on the right, but those are negative values. And here's what I want you to be careful with. A negative 1 squared means negative 1 times negative 1. Negative times a negative is a positive, so we're getting positive 1. Negative 2 squared, negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. So what you end up seeing, negative times a negative is going to be a positive with each of these. So we're getting those numbers. So using that table, if I told you x squared equals 36, so what does x equal? Well, since this is x squared, where it's 36, I see it's equal to 6. But I also see over here, x squared, 36, it's equal to negative 6. So if we do that the same for each of these, we get a 10 here, and then a negative 10 based on where those values are. So if we didn't want to do this whole table, how can we solve it? And I've actually brought this up earlier in the semester, getting us ready for this exact thing. So if we have an x squared equals 36, we had said the way to undo something that's squared is by square rooting it. And we also said when you square root something, you get a positive and a negative. So even though the calculator won't be giving us both answers, we get a positive and a negative. So for this one, the square root of 36 is a positive and a negative 6. So if we're using that same idea, you end up getting x to be 12 and x to be negative 12 for this one. And if we combine that idea for the square root property, it says to solve a quadratic equation when it's x squared equal to some number, you square root both sides. And then don't forget, you're always going to get 2 solutions. Now, we're going to get into stuff where you're not just getting the positive number and its negative number, like a 4 and a negative 4. We will get different answers, but just know that you get 2 solutions. And those solutions always mean that they're the zeros or the x-intercepts. So let's take a look at a couple of these. First one, we square root both sides, and when we square root, we get a plus and a minus. So on the left we have x, and then square root of 81 is 9, so we're getting a plus and minus 9, which means you're getting x equals 9, x equals negative 9. I'm fine with you either writing it as this or as 2 separate ones. I'm okay with either. Looking at this next one, you can't square root both sides yet until the x squared is by itself. So what we have to do first is add 4. So now we have an x squared, and then that's a 16. So we square root both sides. We get a plus and a minus 4. Or you could write it as x equals 4, x equals negative 4. Either one is fine. For this one, we don't have the x squared by itself. We have a 3 times x squared. So we have to get rid of that 3 first. And since it's 3 times x squared, we would divide both sides by 3. Because on the left, that just becomes a 1. So we have x squared equals 25. Now if we square root both sides, you get a plus and a minus. So you get x equals plus or minus 5. Or write it as plus 5 minus 5. Moving on. Now we have something where we're going to get 2 answers, but they're not going to be each like opposites. So for this one, we have the b minus 7, the whole thing being squared. So now we can square root it. Square root over here, and you get a plus and a minus. So on the left, square rooting the squared just cancels that out, so you're left with a b minus 7, that whole thing that was in parentheses. And then over here, plus or minus, square root of 36 is 6. So plus or minus 6. So I would recommend writing this as 2 separate equations at this step. So you have b minus 7 equals a positive 6. And you have a b minus 7 equals a negative 6. That's coming from that plus minus there. So our next step, we would add 7. And you're getting b equals 13. Then we look at that separate equation. We would add the 7. And we're getting b equals 1. So you're getting 2 solutions of b equals 13, b equals 1. Do the exact same stuff with the next one. We're going to want to add the 16 first, though. So now we have an x plus 9 squared equals 16. Square root both sides and you get a plus and minus. So you have x plus 9 equals plus or minus 4. So the 2 equations, x plus 9 equals 4, x plus 9 equals negative 4. You would want to subtract the 9, which leads you to getting x equals negative 5. And then over here, you're subtracting the 9, and you're getting x equals negative 13. On C, you would want to divide by 3 first, and then square root both sides once you have that x squared all by itself. So x equals plus or minus 3. And for this one, you would want to divide by 2 first, leaving you with x plus 4 squared equals 144. Then you can square root both sides, and you're getting a plus and a minus. X plus 4 equals plus or minus 12. So your 2 equations would be x plus 4 equals 12, x plus 4 equals negative 12. Subtracting 4 from both sides, you're getting x equals 8, and x equals negative 16. So using those same ideas, I want you to take a look at these 4. You should be getting an answer of x equals plus or minus 2 for this one when you take a look. This one you should get an answer of x equals 9, x equals 1. For this one you get x equals plus or minus 10. And then this one x equals 10, x equals -12. So hopefully that helps. I'll be taking a look at your assessments today. Have a good day. Message me with any questions.